Welcome, everyone. My name is Benga Gunjimi to this asylum workshop. We are thrilled that you are here today. We have a diverse representation from different states and even international. So we are so excited for this workshop. So we are going to get right into it. Today's workshop title is Preparing Evidence to Support Your Asylum Claim. And before we get right into today's presentation, that is going to be presented by Ms. April Holloway. She is one of our immigration attorneys at Nigerian Center, and she will be providing all the details we're here for. I want to talk a little bit about the work of the Nigerian Center for those who are joining us for the very first time. So about the Nigerian Center. The Nigerian Center is an immigrant community center located in Washington, D.C., but our programs are kind of national. So I'm going to play a short video to describe the work that we do, and after which I would highlight opportunities for you all to get involved. My name is Benga Gunjimi, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Nigerian Center. The Nigerian Center is the very first Nigerian American immigrant and community center. While we are called the Nigerian Center, we serve all minority and all immigrant groups in the United States. In many immigrant communities across the country and around the world, whether they're Chinese or Jewish or Latinos or even Ethiopians, there is an actual location members of those communities can walk into to support the American dream and American experience. While the Nigerian community individually has prospered, we now have an opportunity as a community to have our own Nigerian Center.
I am most excited to be a part of the Nigerian Center because we are a resource hub. And we know that while a lot of Nigerians we may know come into the country and they have a connection here or there is a huge population that don't have access. I can speak to thinking about maybe 30, 40 years ago when my parents came to the country. And while my dad came to the country through education, my mom came through a lottery. And when she got here, she had to go do things the regular way. You know, she came in New York, hustled, worked at McDonald's for like 2 weeks. And from McDonald's, she started getting, you know, other menial jobs before she was able to meet my dad. They got married, they had children. My mom didn't go back to school until she was like 40 to finally start her career. And I know that if there was something like the Nigerian Center, she could have been afforded opportunities, access information on how to go to school or how to start her own business if that's what she wanted to venture into.
I remember my uncle, I think I was like 10. He got deported. I haven't seen him in years because he can't come back in this country. If he had had the resources that the Nigerian Center offered, maybe it would be a different story.
As a pastor, and I can speak confidently for the church community, a lot of pastors struggle with the kinds of immigration challenges that their members are having. And sometimes when we pastors meet, we joke about the fact that there's this thing that is, you know, the don't ask, don't tell kind of thing, a principle that most Nigerians are engaging in. They don't tell you what they're going through. Some of them are dying in silence. By the time they speak up, sometimes it's too late. And I know that as a pastor, you know, I could have, the Nigerian Center will have come handy in helping people to know what is right, having the kind of the right information, speak to the right attorney, have right representation in courts, and just to make the journey easier and smoother in the United States.
People come here from different paths, and for the same main reason is to get a better life, a better situation for their family. So there are numerous ways, numerous paths to the United States and to citizenship. So we help people with family-based immigration, employment-based immigration, asylum, refugee cases, student visas, pretty much everything that the law allows us to assist people with the process of immigration.
You know, just having this center here, you know, it's just people identified that looks just like us, who we can get the resource from. I mean, this is something that even me as a grown-up young person just wanted to come. I wanted to know that it belongs here. I'm just happy that this is here. I wish that my mom and dad, you know, they were still alive to like witness this experience.
From the time my parents came from Kenya, they immigrated to New Jersey, and that's where they actually met. It took years for my mom to find employment. My dad has stayed at the same job for 25 plus years in fear of not being able to find other employment. Not even that, being able to purchase a home, it took them 25 years to buy their dream home. Having the healthcare aspect and having health insurance for my siblings and I. Nigerian Center is providing a service from all crosses across the board for immigrants.
And Nigerian Center provides opportunities with immigration and naturalization, provide home ownership opportunities, access to capital, language classes, and cultural programs.
Learning about the Nigerian Center was a godsend. You know, growing up, I used to think about how we can share our experiences and our culture. And oftentimes, Nigerian people are so interested in giving back, but there are few opportunities and motives to do so. So when I heard about the Nigerian Center, it just clicked. We're talking about home ownership. We're talking about financial literacy. We're talking about immigration services, not only for people from our background diaspora, but for everybody else as well who can gain from it. I see the Nigerian Center not only as an opportunity to celebrate our culture, but to also share it as well.
I welcome you to be a part of the journey and to be a part of the experience. Welcome to the Nigerian Center. Okay, so I want to talk about our upcoming events. November 29th, we are going to have another immigration workshop, but this time is a citizenship workshop, preparing for the citizenship exam. It's going to be the same speaker, November 29th. Shortly after this presentation, the registration will open and you can register for that workshop. How do you get involved in our work at the Nigerian Center? A few options to do so. Number one is we have a media collection of all the previous videos of our workshop series. We've done a whole treatment on family-based immigration, employment-based immigration, the EB 1 to 5, asylum, humanitarian-based immigration, TPS, work authorizations, a slew of resources that are available on our media page, as well as other non-immigration related workshops like home ownership, credit, access to capital. You can find all of this on our media page, as well as on our YouTube page. Volunteer opportunities. If you want to volunteer to be a part of the work that we do, please send us an email at info@nigeriancenter.org. If you go to the website on the screen, you will see some volunteer opportunities that we do have open. If we don't get back to you immediately, please do not give up. Or if we don't have an immediate opportunity for you, do not give up. Please keep in touch and see how you might be able to join our team and support our work. We do have a communities partners network, and these are community leaders, nonprofit organizations, faith-based, business, media, that are part of our community. If you have any touch points with any immigrant group, it's a very simple process to join our communities partners page. If you're not following us on social media, please do so today. We are available on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn at the Nigerian Center or Nigerian Center. Speaking opportunities, we're constantly seeking speakers. Please go to the speaking page if you'd like to be a presenter and pitch a subject of interest or expertise you may have to us. If you're not yet a donor to the Nigerian Center, I want to invite you to please do so today. Please do not consider any donation too small. $5, $10, $20 will go a long way. We are a volunteer-led team, and your resources, your support will go an extra mile, will go a long way. the best way to support the Nigerian Center is to be a recurring donor. And you can please start that today. It's a very simple process. You can start at any amount. It's going to make a significant impact to continue, to help us to continue the work that we do, whether it's access to immigration justice, financial justice, home ownership, cultural classes, language classes. All of these programs are made possible through donations like people like yourselves. Please do not discount the opportunity to support us at any capacity, even if $5 is really going to go a long way, and you can do that today. Okay, that said, I am so pleased to bring on our speaker for today. Miss April, please feel free to come online and also share your screen. She would be speaking to us about this very important topic of asylum preparing evidence. As you might know, Nigerian Center is currently leading a TPS application. While Nigeria currently is not designated for TPS, individuals are able to apply for asylum individually. But I'm going to turn it over to Ms. April to take us further. Our presentation will be loading up shortly. Over to you, April.
All right, so I think I'm going to stop sharing and then start over again so we can not have that same problem. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Just give me a moment for some technical issues. I am of the generation that is not super computer savvy, even though I don't look like it. So just give me a moment to get in here. All right, well, I'm getting this to come back up. I do want to go ahead and start talking to you because I know your time is precious. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the difference between affirmative and defensive asylum. I don't want to get too bogged down in that, but that is a question that some people have, so I want to address it. Affirmative asylum simply means that you are going to be interviewed by an asylum officer. Whereas defensive asylum means that you're going in front of a judge. That's the main difference between those two things. Now, other minor things that are different about the two is that affirmative asylum in front of an officer means you're being evaluated for one form of asylum, that one traditional asylum that leads to residency. However, when it's defensive asylum, that means you're being evaluated for 3 different forms of asylum. There's going to be the traditional asylum, withholding, and then withholding under CAT. Those 2 other ones do not lead to residency, but they do allow you to remain in the United States and obtain a work permit. Okay. Okay, Benga, I might need you to step in here for me because I've hit screen sharing again and it's still telling me that my screen is paused.
So you can email the presentation to me if you haven't. Another option is it helps if you actually download the attachment. Download it and then try to share the file as opposed to sharing directly from the web.
All right. All right, I did just share it with you. I'm looking to also download it. All right, I think I got it. Can you guys see?
Yes.
All right. All right. So as I was saying, for affirmative and defensive asylum, the main difference is going to be one is in front of an officer and the other is in front of the judge. For defensive asylum, you're being evaluated for 3 different forms of asylum, and you're able to bring in live witnesses when you're in front of a judge, whereas when you're doing affirmative asylum in front of the officer, it's just you and the officer. Okay, now my screen went.
Sorry to interject.
Yes.
I still see loading.
Oh, no.
Can others see a screen or just myself?
Okay.
Yeah, it's still loading.
And I did not get the email that you sent to me. Oh, now we see your screen.
So I think what I'm going to do when I hit slideshow is when I start having problems.
Okay, we can just.
So I think I'm just going to leave us here. I know that's not the most professional thing, but I don't want to have people waiting either. What do you think?
Let's do it. Excellent. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to leave us here. All right. So that one traditional form of asylum that leads to residency, one of the major requirements of it is that you must file for asylum within 1 year. There are 2 exceptions to missing that 1-year filing deadline, and those are changed conditions or extraordinary circumstances. Now, the difference between those 2 things is that changed conditions is going to be something that happens that affects whether or not you have a fear to return to your home country later on after you've arrived to the United States. And that thing can be your country status, it could be your personal situation, it could even be a matter of US law, but it affects whether or not you are eligible for asylum. Whereas extraordinary circumstances affects whether or not it was possible for you to apply for asylum when you arrived. I know that's very confusing, so we're going to actually do some examples. I think it's easier for you to see the difference between those 2 things rather than me just explaining it. So here's our first example. Let me just move this. Okay. So we have X who arrived from Cameroon on a visitor's visa. Several years after his arrival, his brother was murdered for practicing his religion. His lands were burned as well. This is a real 4th Circuit case, actually, that I'm pulling these facts from. X and his brother have the same religion. X he will now apply for asylum after being in the US for several years. Does he have an excuse for his failure to file in the first year? And if he does have an excuse, is it a changed condition or is it an extraordinary circumstance? I'm going to give you just a second to think about it. Tell us in the comments, what do you think? Changed condition, extraordinary circumstance, or there's no excuse available for him? I said put it in the comments, but then I can't see the comments. Okay, so
I can read it up. I can read what the comments are.
okay.
Oh no, I was on mute. So I'm reading out the I'm reading. So some said it's neither extraordinary, change, extraordinary. It should have filed within 1 year, I guess. And the last one is changed.
Okay, everybody who said change condition, you're correct and you get a cookie. So when he first arrived in the United States, there was no fear of return to his home country. It was only after the murder of his brother and the burning of his lands did he now have a fear. So now he's experienced a changed condition from the time that he arrived in the United States. Now, the next example is going to illustrate why that is a changed condition. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Y was 14 years old when he arrived to the United States with his parents. His parents were fleeing ethnic cleansing in Ethiopia. Shortly after his arrival, both his parents were killed in a car accident. Y was taken in and raised by family friends. Now 18 years old, Y wants to apply for asylum. Does he have an excuse for failing to file within his first year of arrival? I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer to this one. I'm not going to make you guess. Yes, he does. And the reason why is extraordinary circumstances. Now, here's the difference between this and the last one. The fear, the ethnic cleansing, it existed at the time that Y arrived in the United States, right? So there's no change of condition. The same fear was present at the time that he arrived as is present when he was 18 years old. What changed is his ability to apply for asylum. As a 14-year-old, he could not do that. As a 15-year-old, he couldn't do that. That's called a legal disability. He was unable to advocate for himself as a teenager to apply for asylum. Now, the thing for both of these is change condition, extraordinary circumstance, is that whatever you've experienced, you still have to apply within a reasonable amount of time after the situation. So in the last situation, his brother gets killed. If he applies for asylum within 6 months, that's of his brother's death, that is presumed to be a reasonable amount of time. If he applies for asylum 2 years after his brother has passed away, that is not going to be presumed to be a reasonable amount of time after the change condition. Now, in this situation, if he applies at 18 years old, this young man from Ethiopia, that's a reasonable amount of time after his legal disability. 18, 19, still probably a reasonable amount of time. But once he gets into 21 and he's fully considered an adult, that's probably not going to be a reasonable amount of time to have not filed after the extraordinary circumstance. Now, this next one I am going to have you guess on. Z arrived in the United States on a student visa. While living in the DRC, Z participated in many protests against the government and had been falsely imprisoned and tortured. Now, years later, Z has completed her master's and wants to apply for asylum. Does she have a reasonable excuse for failing to file within 1 year? I'm going to tell you up front, it's a trick question. So you tell me your guess. Is Z experienced a changed condition, an extraordinary circumstance, or they have no basis on which to have failed to file within 1 year? And Benga's going to tell me your guesses.
So far we have one response, which is no. The second one is no. I guess that means no reasonable explanation. And the third one is no as well. And no keeps coming up. No.
Okay. You guys are being really harsh on Z. Z actually would qualify based on change condition, which sounds contrary to what I said previously, but change condition is not only the situation in your home country, but it's also the situation in the United States. So in the United States, Z has safely been here on a student visa. But now that student visa is coming to a close with the completion of the master's, which means her status in the US is changing. And based on this change condition of no longer having status in the US, Z will be able to have an excuse for failing to file within 1 year. And that's going to be true whether or not Z thought things might get better in their home country and they're going to go back, or whether Z always believed things are not going to get better. Z had a student visa. The student visa is going to expire on completion of degree. They've experienced a change condition. We have questions about that. Come on, tell me. I think there's a question anyway. Benga, is there a question there? Or is that just more people saying no?
It said it totally makes sense. There's no specific question. If there's any question, please unmute yourself. But there's no
okay.
Box.
All right, perfect. We're going to do just one more because I know this is a little bit of a tricky concept. So here we have A, who arrived in the United States and immediately contacted a notario. If you're not familiar, that is a person who is not a lawyer. They hold themselves out to be, oh, just come to us, we'll file the paperwork for you. You don't need an attorney. They charge too much. You just pay me a small amount and I'll file this for you. So this person immediately contacts a notario to assist them with filing for asylum. Nearly 2 years later, they learn that the person never filed for asylum. Does A have a reasonable excuse for failing to file within the first year? And if so, is it a changed condition or an extraordinary circumstance?
Okay, let's see what people have to say. The first one is extraordinary circumstance. Yes, extraordinary. Yes, extraordinary. Yes, I believe yes, extraordinary, extraordinary.
So maybe I made these too hard. So the problem here is that reliance on a notario is not protected under any law. Reliance on an attorney is protected. So unfortunately, this person does not have a valid excuse for failing to file within 1 year. Had they gone to a licensed attorney and that attorney failed to file within 1 year, they would then be able to file a complaint against, say that somebody comes to me and I don't file timely, they can file a complaint against me through my bar where I'm licensed at, and then they attach that complaint to their new asylum application. That gives them an excuse for failing to file within 1 year. However, these notarios, they're not licensed. They're not legal providers of any kind licensed by any state or jurisdiction. So they don't have a duty to you of competency or diligence or anything else that you can reasonably rely on as an excuse for failing to file. So only if you had hired an attorney and that licensed attorney failed to file would you have the excuse of an extraordinary circumstance preventing you from filing within 1 year. Okay. So that's one reason why you'll see lawyers saying don't rely on notarios or other people who hold them out. It's not just a money grab. It's because if you pay me to do something, you are protected by the law that I have to do that thing for you, whereas these individuals are not. All right. So now we're going to get into some asylum requirements. I want to review this because before I can tell you what evidence you need to support your asylum claim, we need to be clear about what the requirements are to have a successful asylum claim. Now, there's a distinction. Anyone who is afraid to return to their home country can file for asylum. However, that does not mean that every person who's afraid is going to have their asylum case granted. So there's a distinction. You can file if you're afraid, but only if you meet these 5 requirements will your case actually be granted. The first requirement is that there is past persecution. That can be physical harm or a credible threat of physical harm, which also includes sexual assault and sexual violence. So if somebody is being discriminatory to you because of your religion or your race, but they have not threatened physical harm or caused physical harm, that's not going to be interpreted as past persecution. Okay, the next one is objective and subjective fear of future persecution. What that means is that not only do you have that fear that you might be harmed in the future, but a reasonable person, the decision maker, the judge, or the asylum office in this case, must also objectively be able to understand that fear. For example, I might have a fear of my cell phone. And to me, it's very real. It's subjectively real. But if I cannot explain to a judge or an asylum officer why I have that fear such that they objectively understand it, then it's not going to meet that second requirement. Okay. The third requirement is that there has to be a nexus or a connection between your fear and a protected ground. I'm going to go in more detail about this on the next slide, but right now I will just say general crime or general gang activity in your country is not protected under asylum. You have to be targeted for a specific reason in order for your asylum case to be granted. The next requirement is that there is no possibility of internal relocation, meaning that it's not possible for you to be safe in another part of your country, that the problem is not isolated to just one city, okay? And the last requirement is that your government is unwilling or unable to protect you. So if the government has made efforts at curbing the activity that is happening that threatens your religion or your ethnic group, then the judge might find, hey, your government is willing or able to protect you, so we're not going to grant you asylum. You have to prove that the government is not willing or able to protect you. So let's go more into nexus now, because it is the thing that a lot of people struggle with in their asylum cases. They know that they've been harmed in the past. They're afraid to go back, but they have difficulty with nexus, meaning that the reason you're afraid has to be connected to your religion, your political opinion, your race. Oops, I'm so sorry. I went too far. Or a protected social group. A protected social group is going to be something like your gender identity, your sexuality, your particular ethnic group, and other things that are innate to you, things that are innate to you, and you should not be forced to change them, and that other people in your community can identify you based on that thing. So if anybody has questions, definitely type them so Benga can read them to me, or you can unmute yourself and give me your question, because I know that this one is a little difficult for people. Okay. So now we're going to go into evidence that you can use to support past persecution and future persecution, which is going to tie in your nexus, your basis of why you're afraid to return. So to establish past persecution, if you have suffered an injury, you can submit photos of those injuries to the court. Sometimes when we have people who are unrepresented, they think that they can just show to the judge, like, here's where I have these scars. That's not sufficient. You have to actually take photos of them and put them into evidence for the judge or for the asylum officer to consider for your case. The next is going to be medical records. If you were unable to have medical treatment at the time that you were harmed in your home country, you can still go to a medical provider here in the United States and build that record. I'll give you an example. I had a woman who was severely abused in her home country, and she suffered an injury to her eye where she couldn't open her eyelid all the way. So it was a physical thing that you could see. Okay, but I had her go to the doctor, and the doctor was able to give her a report saying that the injury that she had was consistent with the way that she described how she had been harmed. And on top of that, it was not just a physical visual injury. She also had limited vision in that eye because of the assault. So we were able to use that medical record, even though it wasn't from the time that she was injured, as a part of our evidence to establish her past persecution. If you've been to a therapist, you can also use your therapist records. If you do not want to produce your therapist records to the court, that's fine. You can simply ask the therapist to write one letter that discloses the information that you're comfortable with. So if you're only comfortable with the therapist saying that you were harmed in your home country, how you were harmed, that's fine if you don't want to disclose every single thing and have it as a part of your record. The therapist can even make a recommendation. The court is not required to accept the therapist's recommendation, but they can make a recommendation that it's not good for you, or it's not in your best interest. It would be damaging to your mental health for you to return to home country, and they can add that to the letter. The next is going to be letters from your friends, family, professors, community members, anyone else you can think of that has firsthand knowledge of your past persecution. Please note here that quality over quantity is what is important. You don't want to have 7 letters that all say the exact same thing. It's going to be much more powerful if you have 1 or 2 letters where the person explains who they are, how they're connected to you, how long they've known you, what they've seen you suffer, how they know it's not safe for you to return to your home country. That's better than 7 letters of people saying, please grant this person asylum. They really need asylum. They need to stay in the US. So quality over quantity. And the next, in order to establish your past persecution, sometimes you're going to be responsible for educating your judge or educating the asylum officer on exactly what the situation is in your home country. Even our brightest professionals don't always have a handle on exactly what is occurring on every single country. So if you have to submit evidence from professional historians that just explain the conflict happening in your country, or have an expert witness submit testimony, whether that's live or in writing, that is something that can help explain your case. Also, you know yourself, if you're not good at explaining things, then you definitely want to take advantage of the opportunity to submit written evidence that gives a concise picture of what's happening in your home country so that you won't be responsible for it if you know that you're not very good at explaining things. Okay. Now, the evidence to establish future persecution means that you have to establish that what's happening in the country right now and the likely trajectory for the future is not going to improve with regards to why you're afraid to return to your home country. So the easiest thing is if you do a State Department report or travel advisory. These are things that the judge will admit into evidence with no objection. If the State Department report says that your particular religion or ethnic group is being targeted in your home country, the judge accepts that as fact. So admitting those into evidence are good. If you find yourself in court and you, for some reason, have forgotten to admit that, submit it to the judge, just ask them if they will take judicial notice of the State Department report. Of course, you want to read it before then, but they will take judicial notice of it, even on the day of court, without the government attorney objecting to it, because that's how much weight they carry. Okay. News articles. If you have an article from a reputable source that references the issue, or even if it references you, if you've been involved in protest and there's a news article about it, or you're the pastor or somewhere higher up in your particular religion that's being persecuted, and it's in news articles, you can submit that. You just need to make sure to have it translated into English for the court. People always send me YouTube videos that they want to admit into evidence. We can't admit video into evidence, but what you can do is take a still shot from the video, and then on a paper, you're going to transcribe what is happening in the video and include a link to the video. The judge will admit it. They'll admit it with different weights, so they might not give it as much weight as an article that is written by a reputable source, but they will admit it into evidence if you do it that way. Next is going to be letters from friends, family, the same things we said before, but I here also included police officers and government officials, because guess what? If you have a police officer or a government official that specifically says, if this person returns to this country, they will be harmed, or this person should not return here because the police, the government will not protect them, that is very good evidence that you are subject to future persecution. Also, if you've received threats, whether they be by messenger, WhatsApp, however you receive them, you need to print those out, translate them, and submit them to the court. That's also going to help build your credibility, because oftentimes we have people come into court and say they've received so many threats, they have zero evidence of it. And it's, oh, I lost my phone, or, oh, I deleted them. That doesn't help your credibility. So whatever threats you have, if you can produce them, that's going to help your credibility to establish future persecution.
Question?
Now here, yes, go ahead.
Question, is it sufficient to present screenshots of various threats to your life and property due to political involvement in trying to hold government accountable to their actions and inactions.
This sounds like it's going to be very valuable evidence. When you say screenshot, are you saying that you don't have the original?
So please, you can follow up if you type that
Yes.
question, Steve, you can follow up with that. And while we get to that, get what you asked for that question. The next question is, must everything be translated?
Yes, everything has to be produced into English because not only is your asylum officer or judge reviewing the file, there are multiple other people who are reviewing the file. It all remains confidential, but there are multiple other people who are reviewing the file. So even if you have an officer who speaks your first language or a judge who speaks your first language, they still have to admit everything into English for the other people who might be reviewing the file.
So Steve, please make a clarification, screenshots either on your phone, on the computer, or video you talked about.
Right. And if the threats are political in nature, that's obviously going to go to establishing nexus. You're being threatened because of your political opinion, your political beliefs. That's going to be helpful in establishing all of the elements you need. Can I say that it's a complete asylum case? Not at this moment, because there are a few other requirements, but it does sound valuable.
Okay.
All right. Sample letter from a friend. Now, don't copy and paste this. I just did this to give you a kind of overview of what you might be looking for, but the more authentic it is, the better. So here, my name's April Holloway. I've been friends with XX since 2010. I'm establishing our relationship there. We lived in the same neighborhood during high school. Here, I'm establishing how I know personal information about this person. I witnessed some of the threats XX received because of her religious practices. Here, I'm giving firsthand information, which is very important. Firsthand information about the threats that were received. And then I'm going to go and say specifically, on one occasion in May 2013, I saw her being harmed by several people while they yelled that she must convert or they will send her to hell. That meant they would kill her. So I'm not only saying what they said, she must convert or send her to hell, I'm defining what that means. Because what we find sometimes is people will say, they threatened me. They said, I will suffer the consequences. They threatened me. They said, I will go to the hole. And whatever euphemism is being used is not something that translates in American culture as a threat. So you have to explain to us why it is a threat. So they would send her to hell. That meant they would kill her. You have to explain that, okay? She was able to escape that incident, but I know that it is not safe for her to return here because people who practice this religion are commonly persecuted. So here in this sentence, I'm establishing future persecution. The police will often overlook them being targeted for harm because the community at large does not agree with that religion. Here in this sentence, the person is establishing the government is unwilling. Since this is true across the country, I do not believe it would be safe for her to return and respectfully request she be granted asylum. And that last sentence, establishing there's no potential for internal relocation. So this is just a sample letter to kind of hit on. Now, you might not have a friend or family member who can hit on every single point, and that's fine. They're going to write their letter to attest to the points that they can account for, the points they can credibly discuss. And in order to make the letter more official, they are going to attach their ID if they're comfortable with that. If they're not comfortable with it, then they should at least sign their name if they're not able to attach their ID or passport. Now, if the person is in the United States and it's a defensive asylum claim, it is better if they can appear in person to the court because the government might object to having their statement entered if they don't also have an opportunity to ask them questions. Now, of course, every person you know may not like that. They may not want to take off work. They just may not be comfortable with going to court, whatever the reason is. But you should just try and tell them, just impress upon them how important it is if they could please also appear for court in addition to writing a letter to you. And if they're not comfortable with it, then you just tell the court why if they ask. Just be honest. This person was not comfortable with coming to court because of their own experience or what have you, or because they're undocumented. That happens too. This person was willing to write me a letter, but they were not willing to come to court because they're undocumented. You just tell the truth about it. Okay, other evidence besides statements that can also establish the inability to internally relocate are going to be prior attempts to relocate. So if you were in your home country and you began having problems and you already tried moving to a different city and you still continued having the same problems, you want to submit that evidence to the court in the form of your address in the location that you tried to move to. Lack of connections or housing in other parts of the country. If all of your family was concentrated in one part of the country, and that's the only place where you'd have a house to live, and it's impossible for you to have any kind of a home base or education or employment or anywhere else in the country, then you can say that to the judge too. I would become an internally displaced person if I tried to relocate in my country because I have no connections anywhere else outside of that city that I was in. Or if you have no country, no family remaining in the country, like everyone fled, you have no family remaining in the country whatsoever. So that's why you can't internally relocate. That's a reason too. Gang checkpoints. If you come from a country that has been so taken over by gang activity that they actually have set up checkpoints for people moving from one place to the other, you can also present that evidence to the judge. If you have an article to present about that, that's good evidence. If not, you can testify regarding it. I can't move to another part of my country because the gang will know that I'm coming from an area that used to be dominated by a different gang, and they won't let me in, even though I'm not associated with that gang. And lastly, you can also point to country size. Because your judges are mostly going to be American, they are often not cognizant of the difficulty imposed by trying to internally relocate in a small country. So just to bring it to the forefront of their mind, you can say, well, my country is not like the United States. It's not like relocating and you can move from Georgia to California. My country is the size of Maryland. So you want to point that out, bring it to their attention. Relocating in my country is not the same thing as trying to relocate here. Okay. Evidence to establish that the government is unwilling or unable to protect citizens. The first and most persuasive thing is going to be if the government has an official policy that they won't protect you. So if the government officially has said, let's take the government for Venezuela, for example. The government has officially said, here's a list of people that we have found to be traitors to our country. They have refused to continue serving in the military, or they have refused to continue doing whatever actions the government has requested of them. And so now they are traitors. That is the government affirmatively saying they are unable and unwilling to protect you. Or if the government has an unofficial policy that they will not protect you. So the government has been asked, there are certain countries where the government's been asked to specifically say female genital mutilation is not allowed. Honor killings are not allowed. And at every turn, the government has refused to say that. They've refused to make it an official policy. So, well, now it's an unofficial policy that you allow it, okay? Which is similar to government acquiescence. If the government has been asked to protect a party and they continuously do not protect that party, or if they're turning their head every single time something happens to a person in a particular group, that's government acquiescence. So if you have evidence of that, then that's very good for your asylum case. It's bad for the country, it's bad for the people, but it's very good for your asylum case. You can submit, in this case, documents showing that people belonging to your sexual identity or gender identity were beaten in the streets, police were standing around, they did nothing. That's government acquiescence. Again, the State Department reports are also important for showing this. And any third-party reports, like amnesty reports, may also show the government is unable or unwilling. You can also use credible testimony of similar situations. So if somebody else from your home country has had a similar situation and they've already been awarded asylum, you can also submit their grant of asylum and a statement from them as to what their fear was, and that's considered evidence for your asylum case as well. And let me just look here 1 second. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything that I wanted to tell you on that slide. Okay. Nope, I got it all. All right, thank you. This is a good time if anybody has any questions, because I'm about to switch and go into talking about TPS versus asylum. So
Yes.
questions here?
2 follow-up questions to the previous one. The first one is, sorry to backtrack, but could you bring a government official to be a nexus from Haiti? I hope I got that questions right, Chelsea. The second one is by screenshots, the previous question about fear of persecution from the government. By screenshots, I mean documentary evidence from exchanges and comments from platforms that you've used in exchange of engaging with the government. Hold on 1 second. Such as Facebook pages, blogs, WhatsApp comments, and so forth and so on. The follow-up, another question is, can someone who is in his home country and fail to be protected by the government seek asylum? Meaning, can you also apply from overseas in this case? I think you already answered that question, but you can speak to those 3 questions. Let me know if you want me to repeat any one of them.
Sure. So the first one is asking, I think, if a government official can testify as to nexus. Yes, they can. But just because they're a government official doesn't mean that it's automatically credible. They still have to establish the connection.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Chelsea.
So that's not my question. So I was wondering if a government official could be considered a protected nexus for the country of Haiti. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on down there.
I think you're asking it. So yes, like former military members, former police officers, these are considered protected.
Okay. That
Chelsea,
was my question.
Yeah, Chelsea, can you? I think you just have a little background noise.
Yeah.
There.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
so
sorry. My child's sitting right next to me and he's got his tablet on. I've got my headphones on, so I can't hear him.
So if you look right here on this one, the last one is protected social groups. So the Fourth Circuit, we have people in here from all different places. So just be aware that even though asylum is supposed to be federal law, that different circuits have found differently on this. And if you go to an immigration attorney, they'll be able to tell you, or they'll be able to pull out a CURS ban. For any of you who are, just give me 1 second, I want to grab this so I can show it to you. For any of you who are representing yourself, if you go to the library, you can find this book. It's called CURS ban, okay? In this book, you can look up protected social groups, and it will break down by circuit. So you find what circuit you're in. If you're in Maryland, DC, Virginia, you're in the Fourth Circuit. Exactly what circuits have found to be protected social groups. So here, former military members, former police officers are considered a protected social group. Now, there is further inquiry into what their roles were during the time that they were military members or police officers, but you would be able to find in CURS ban what the status is for your circuit of who is considered a protected social group and who's not. So for Haiti, it's not by country. Former government officials would be. The situation I'm thinking of where you have some trouble is like we have some cases right now out of Venezuela where we have former military members who want to use that protected social group, but they've only recently left Venezuela, which means that all the years this conflict is going on, they've been complicit with the government. So that kind of inquiry is made into their activity and evaluating whether or not they deserve protection, because asylum is discretionary. But is it a social group? Yes. Okay, Chelsea, if I did not get the question right, then just let me know. The second one is screenshots. So you do have the source material and you're just using the screenshots as a way to present it into evidence. Yes, that is something that can be submitted as evidence. You just have to be aware when you do this, and I should have said it earlier, that the government can ask to see the rest of the conversation as well. So when you're cutting and pasting it, or when you're screenshotting it and putting it together, you want to make it as complete as possible, not to give the government attorney any reason to believe that you're excluding things that are going to be detrimental to you and that you're producing a full conversation. Okay. And then the last question, unfortunately, no, you can only apply for asylum in the United States. Outside of the United States, you would be applying for refugee status. You can apply for refugee status with the UNHCR, but you have to be actually at the border or in the United States to apply for asylum. That is not consistent with the current policy of CB1, making people apply for asylum and wait in Mexico. There are legal challenges to that right now, because it shouldn't be happening. But that's the way that it is supposed to be. You have to be at the border or in the US.
Can you repeat the name of the textbook? You just the good book
Yes,
you showed us?
It's Kurzban. And so if you just go into the index and literally just look up protected social group, it'll take you to a page where it breaks down by circuit what is considered a protected social group and gives you citations to different cases for that circuit of what's been found. Now, if you see something in another circuit that's not listed for your circuit, you could still use it as persuasive evidence, but it's not controlling if it's not in your circuit.
No more questions at this time.
All right, perfect. So let's go into asylum and TPS. TPS is temporary protected status. The difference in the policy behind asylum and TPS is that the government grants TPS where a country is experiencing a situation that is supposed to be finite. There's supposed to be an end date to that situation. So for example, the country experienced severe earthquakes. The country has experienced a civil war, but there's an end in sight. The country has experienced something that's small. Then the government will designate that country for temporary protected status. It only allows you to remain in the US for as long as it's redesignated. It comes up for redesignation essentially annually, sometimes every 2 years. You do not have the opportunity to obtain residency or a green card through TPS as it is right now. There have been congressional efforts to try and make a pathway to residency directly from TPS, but as of now, there is not one. However, for asylum means you've met these requirements where you should not ever have to return to your home country. And so because of that, we are going to allow you to obtain residency and eventually citizenship in the United States. So asylum leads to residency, TPS does not. With the exception of those 2 forms of asylum that I told you about that can be granted if you did not apply within 1 year. Traditional asylum leads to residency, TPS does not. As far as your ability to return to your home country or advance parole, if you have TPS, you are able to return to your home country. You're able to petition for advance parole and return and come back with permission, because TPS just means there's an event that happened in your country that's making it difficult for people to live right now. It doesn't mean that you're banned from returning there. However, if you filed for asylum, you're saying my country is unsafe for me to return to. I will be targeted, harmed, killed if I go there. So if you are to return to your home country after applying for asylum, that gives rise to the idea that you filed for asylum frivolously, and you might lose the opportunity to return to the United States if the officer who examines you on your way back decides not to let you in. They have the discretion to do that. So for asylum cases, you cannot return to your home country safely. Now, there is a difference of opinion on this next part. Once you become a citizen in the United States, some people think that it is okay for you to return to your home country. I am in the camp that it is never okay to return to your home country, even if you become a citizen, because you're giving too much power to the officer who evaluates you on your way back to the US to make a decision whether to admit you or not. And they can make the decision not to admit you, and there won't be anything you can do about it. Okay. Another difference between asylum and TPS is the requirement for an interview or court attendance. If you apply for asylum, you are eventually going to be interviewed by an asylum officer or have to attend court and go before a judge. However, if you apply for TPS, generally it is granted in the mail or it's denied by mail. You do not have to appear for an interview or go to court. The last difference between asylum and TPS is that the requirements that we just went through for asylum, they're the same for everybody. No matter what country you're coming from, you have to establish past persecution, future persecution, that you can't internally relocate. All those requirements are the same. However, for TPS, there's going to be different requirements depending on which country you're from. The current African countries that are designated for TPS are Cameroon, Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, and South Sudan. Each one of those countries has a different requirement as to what date you must have entered the United States in order to qualify for TPS and when you have to renew. So you have to pay attention to your specific country as to when you're going to apply and or renew your application. All right, Benga, did we get any other questions there before we go into the next two things I have down here, if you can apply for both? Okay.
I think the follow-up was more so, I think this is more so a question for you that can go into like, so I think it's more details about the questions from Chelsea. It was.
We can take it offline, it's okay.
Yeah. So we'll put the contact information right after the session to contact us or April directly on that question. But aside from that, there's no other question. You can proceed, April.
All right, perfect. So the next question is, can you apply for both asylum and TPS? Yes, you can. You can apply for asylum and TPS. And it would be very good at this point to have an evaluation done by an attorney. You can come to us at the Nigerian Center to help you with this, to determine whether or not you have a viable asylum claim. Because if you do, you want to go forward with your asylum claim and have your chance for residency. If not, then you can just ask for your TPS to be granted and for your asylum case to be closed. But that is really not a decision that you want to make on your own, because having an opportunity to go towards residency, if you have a good asylum case, is going to be better for you overall. In general. Some people want to go back to their home country, so I shouldn't say for everybody. In general, going for asylum is going to be better to allow you residency, because when you're applying for TPS, every time you have to renew, there's going to be a little bit of a delay in getting your work permit, which means there's going to be a delay in getting your driver's license renewed, which means you could potentially lose your job while you're waiting for that renewal. And it's just an exhausting way to live. So if you can get residency and have that security, it's a lot better than having to be subject to TPS renewals and not knowing whether or not Congress is going to extend TPS for your country. And the next question is, can you apply for asylum and EB-2, or can you apply for asylum and any other employment visa? And the answer to that is only if you are in an authorized status, or if you're in a lawful status, I should say, not authorized status. So if you are, for example, on a student visa and you want to apply for a national interest waiver, you can do that. You're in an authorized status. But asylum is not a lawful status. Asylum is an authorized stay in the United States. So you're not accruing unlawful presence, but you're also not in lawful status. And for employment style visas, you have to be in lawful status in order for them to be granted while you're in the United States. Okay, so if you have a good application package to apply for a national interest waiver, then do that as opposed to applying for asylum and then just staying in the United States, because it's going to give you an opportunity to go towards residency and not have to worry about your asylum case can take 5 or 6 years before you get an interview, before you get a decision. And during that time, you're just in the United States with no ability to travel. That's something that you definitely want to have evaluated again by an attorney before you make the decision to overstay your visa and then just apply for asylum. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about resources from the Nigerian Center. Earlier, I talked about State Department reports and other news articles, things you can submit to support your asylum application. The Nigerian Center also has state reports and evidence that is specific to Nigeria that you can find on the website, but definitely contact Benga, come into one of our walk-in appointments or our walk-in free consultations on Thursdays and talk to us about that, because for your case, you want to submit as much specific information to your situation as possible. Remember, general crime, a general gang activity is not protected under asylum. Only the protected classes, religion, race, political opinion, sexual identity, gender identity, as Chelsea brought up, former military member, former police officer, those protected classes have to be mentioned to have the best evidence available. We also provide application and document review. We can also help you preparing for your interviews. It's going to be your asylum interview, your marriage-based interview, maybe it's your citizenship interview. We can assist with those things. Also, you can find our previously recorded seminars covering issues like TPS, understanding Congress, understanding visa bulletin, work authorization on humanitarian visas, almost anything that you need connected to immigration. We either have the resource at the Nigerian Center or we can find the resource for you. So please use us in that way for the community. And now, any questions that you have, Benga can either read them to me or you can unmute yourself to tell me what question you would like to have answered. And if it's a private or personal matter, you can walk in for a private consultation on Thursdays.
So at the interest of time, we'll take one more questions. So you touched on this, and this is still about the advanced parole for asylum. I believe the answer is no. But I'm going to let you make that. If you apply for asylum and it's still pending at the immigration court, can you apply for advanced parole in order to visit your family members, to your family members' countries, other than, can you go if you have family members in another country, not your own country? Can you apply for advanced parole to go visit while having a pending asylum application?
You can apply for advanced parole. It's going to be the government's choice whether to grant it or not. Your attorney, if you're working with an attorney, may have a different opinion on that. And because I don't know the particulars of your case, you want to listen to your attorney who knows the particulars of your case as to whether or not it's safe to go. I will tell you for my clients, I tell them once you apply for asylum, you're stuck here in the United States. And I'm very sorry, until your case is adjudicated, you're here. And the reason why I say that is because our officers, our Customs and Border Patrol officers, are not always, I don't want to say something derogatory, but they're not always the brightest, okay? So they might not understand, if you're applying for asylum, why are you outside of the country, you know? And the other reason I say that is because it is very tempting. It's very tempting. It happens all the time. People think, I'm just going to land in one country, and I'll just cross the land border into my home country and no one will ever know. And we always find out. okay? It's too tempting to do it. So just have the discipline to say to yourself, once I apply for asylum, I just have to stay here in the US until my case is adjudicated, which means until I get a decision on my case. And then at that point, once I obtain residency, that's when I can travel to other countries, not my home country.
Well, at this point, can we give Ms. April a virtual round of applause for the wealth of knowledge that she's been able to share with us? Thank you so much for the wealth of information. I'm going to highlight a few opportunities and then we're going to close out. This presentation is being recorded, so you would have access to the entire recording afterwards. So on April 29th, we're having a citizenship workshop. Please let folks know about this.
November 29th.
Thank you for the correction, sir. November 29th. Oh, I see you. Good to see you, sir, Mr. Shegun. We'll have a citizenship workshop. Okay, more information. I'll make it super quick. As April mentioned, there's a wealth of resources regarding various facets of immigration process that you can find the recording on the website. So go to Nigerian Center /media to see the recording of our previous workshop, including this particular one, will be uploaded shortly after tonight's session. Please reach out to us for volunteer opportunities. Join our community partners if you have connection with immigrant groups you think we can serve, and you can let us know what the pain points of those communities are. If you're not following us on social media, please do so. We are at Nigerian Center on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Please follow us today. Speaking opportunities, if you would like to present an area of your expertise to the Nigerian Center, you can reach out to us as well. It is nigeriancenter.org/speaking opportunities. Donations, if you're not currently donating to the Nigerian Center, your donations allow us to do critical services like this to the community. We are a 501c3. Your donations are tax deductible. Please consider to start supporting Nigerian Center today. You can do so online at nigeriancenter.org/donate. I want to quickly talk about opportunities for speaking with attorneys. Every Thursdays from 12:30 to 4:30, we have a free walk-in immigration clinic. For those in the Washington, D.C. metro area, it's a free service to come in to speak to a lawyer, and you can come as often as you need to speak to a lawyer. For those who are not in Washington, D.C., it is not limited to Thursdays. It is all week long. There's a small fee of $55 to that particular service, but it still offers you free consultation as well. If you go to Nigerian Center website, immigration, on the programs immigration, you can complete an intake form, and 24 hours after filling an intake form, someone will follow up with you to schedule your session. And that said, that will be the end of today's workshop. Let me see if there's any questions I should answer to. What about Indiana? Yes, so all the parts of the country, you can always call in, even internationally as well. You can take advantage of the virtual option. For those in the metro area, you can come in. That said, I'm going to release everyone into greatness. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you soon, probably next month. Bye for now.
Mr. Benga, I asked a question. How do we assess the state's reports for Nigeria?
Okay, so so the question is, how do you assess the documents for Nigeria, country conditions? We are going to put that information in the follow-up email that everyone will receive, and everybody would have access to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.